A very good morning, students. Today we are going to start a very important chapter, that is active and passive voice. Now, before understanding this chapter, you must revise and recall all the rules of the tense chapter. Okay, the helping verbs, the structure of the sentences. Okay, so actually, this voice chapter is totally based on the tense chapter. So it is better to recall the tense chapter, their rules, the helping verbs, the structures. Then only you will be able to understand this chapter. Okay? So now we are going to start the chapter, active and passive voice. First of all, let us try to understand what is an active voice and what is a passive voice. First of all, read the following sentences. The first sentence, Ram bought a book. Okay, this is a sentence in active voice. Okay, so here you can see Ram is the subject, bought is your main verb, and a book is your object. Now, what is an active voice? See, when the subject of a verb performs the action named in the verb, then the verb is said to be in active voice. Means here Ram is performing the action of buying a book. So here Ram is your subject and this sentence is in your active voice. Okay, so Ram is your subject, bought is your main verb, and a book is your object. Moreover, here Ram is more emphasized. The subject is more emphasized. Okay, and you can also understand by recalling the rules of the tense chapter, what we studied there. Actually, this sentence is of which tense? Recall what we studied in the tense chapter. Tell me, this sentence is of which tense? This sentence is of simple past tense. Okay, this is a sentence of simple past tense and it is an affirmative sentence. That's why we have used second form of the verb according to the rule. Okay, so again this sentence is in active voice. Actually, whatever the sentences we studied in the tense chapter, all were in active voice. The rules were of active voice. Okay, now what is an passive voice? A book. Next example, actually I have made the passive voice of the active. A book was bought by Ram. So here what we have done, a book is an object or in active voice. So here a book has now become the subject. Was bought, we have used the rule of passive voice of simple past tense. Means the helping verbs of simple past tense in the passive voice are was and were and plus third form of the verb. Then again, a book was bought by Ram. So here the subject in the active voice has become now object in the passive voice. So you can say that when the subject receives the action named in the verb. So here in this sentence, try to understand that the subject has now being received the action. Okay, Ram is receiving the action of buying the book. So here it is there. Okay, so now there are some basic rules, or you can say some basic things which you need to understand, okay, before starting the rules of the voice chapter. So first of all, you must be knowing that there are two types of verbs. Okay, the first one is your transitive verb and the another is your intransitive verb. So it is very, very important to understand this point. Okay, so now first try to understand what is a transitive verb. Let's see. A verb that needs an object to complete its meaning is called a transitive verb. Means, in other words, that a verb which requires an object, okay, to complete its meaning. Let's see an example. Ramesh writes a story. So here you can see that Ramesh is your subject, writes is the verb, and a story is your object. So here write verb requires an object to complete its meaning. Okay, if we remove a story, that is object, from this sentence, then the meaning of this verb is incomplete. Ramesh writes, so it is having an incomplete meaning, and when we add the object a story, it is now having a complete meaning. So therefore it is your transitive verb because it is requiring an object. It requires an object to complete its meaning. Let's see the another example. He helped them. So again, he is your subject, helped is your verb, and them is your object. Again, if we remove them from this verb, then it is not having a complete meaning. Okay, the meaning of this verb remains incomplete. And when we add object to this verb, then it has a complete meaning. Therefore, these two verbs are your transitive verbs. Okay, now another important point. Transitive verbs has two types of objects. It is also very important to understand. Transitive verbs takes two types of objects. The first is your direct object and the second one is your indirect object. Right? Now we will try to understand what is a direct and what is an indirect object. We will try to understand with an example. Now see the example. Father bought me an iPod. Okay. Now here try to understand that this sentence is having two objects. The first one is me and another one is iPod. These are the two objects of this sentence. Father is your subject, bought is your main verb, and me and an iPod, me and iPod are the two objects of this sentence. Now try to understand which one is direct object and which one is indirect object. So now see, first we will see the iPod. Now here iPod is your direct object. Why? Because it answers the question bought what. Okay, try to understand my point. iPod is the direct object because it answers the question bought what. If we ask the question in this sentence that father bought me what, your answer is iPod. So always remember that when you get the answer of putting what, then it becomes your direct object. Okay, again I am explaining you, whenever you get the answer of what in any sentence, then that object is your direct object. Answers the question bought what, answer is your iPod. So iPod is your direct object. Now come to the next object, that is me. So here me is your indirect object. Why it is indirect object? because it answers the question, bought iPod for whom? So always remember that indirect object is the object when we get the answer of whom or for whom or to whom. So father bought an iPod for whom? Your answer is me. So here me is your indirect object. Simple. Try to understand that. If you get the answer of what, then it becomes your direct object, and when you get the answer of whom, then it becomes your indirect object. It is also written here, note, to find out whether the given verb is transitive. Now, by all these rules, we can say that to find out whether the given verb is transitive, we ask the question what and whom, to or for or from whom. Means these two words are very important to understand or to identify that the verb is transitive or intransitive. So whenever you get the answer of what and whom, then the verb is your transitive verb. Okay, it is very important to understand. Now another note, always remember that only transitive verbs are always changed into the passive voice. It is also very important. Always transitive verbs are changed into the passive voice. Intransitive verbs are never changed. Now we will understand about the intransitive verbs. What are intransitive verbs? See here, a verb which does not need an object to complete its meaning but has a complete meaning by itself is called an intransitive verbs. Means the verbs which does not require any object to complete their meaning. Example, the baby laughed. So here the baby is your subject and laughed is your main verb. So this verb here does not require any object to complete its meaning. It has a complete meaning itself. Next, the wind blows. Again, the wind is your subject and blows is your main verb, and this verb here doesn't require any object to complete its meaning. Okay, so these two verbs are your intransitive verbs, and these sentences, these verbs can't be changed into passive voice. Because why? They are intransitive verbs. Okay, now sorry, note, now another important information. Now from here we are going to start the voice chapter. My dear students, only 8 tenses are changed into passive voice. Only 8 tenses. Okay, we have studied 12 tenses total. Okay, so from that only 8 tenses are changed into passive voice. Which are they? Let's see. I have written all the tenses and their helping verbs in the passive voice, which we have to use while changing the active from the passive. So these are the helping verbs of the tenses in the passive voice. Now the first one is your simple present tense, and the helping verb is or am, are plus V3. And always remember that in the passive voice we have to use the third form of the verb, that is past participle form of the verb. Now the next tense is your present continuous tense, and the helping verbs are is oblique am or are plus being, being plus third form of the verb. Next tense is your present perfect tense. Helping verbs are has or have plus been plus V3. Fourth tense is your simple past. Was, were are your helping verb plus V3, third form of the verb. Next tense, past continuous tense. Helping verbs are was oblique were plus being, B-E-I-N-G, being plus third form of the verb. Sixth tense is your past perfect tense. Helping verb had plus been plus V3 form of the verb. Seventh tense is your simple future tense, and the helping verbs of this tense in the passive voice are will or shall plus be plus third form of the verb. And the last tense is your future perfect.